All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the workshop today. We're just waiting for a few more people to join as and kick it off in a minute or two. So get yourself comfortable. Awesome.
It's a really diverse audience.
Yeah, from all over the world.
Wow, cool.
So while we're waiting for more people to join, why don't we start off with a quick icebreaker? Everybody, thank you for being here. So let's hear in the chat where everybody's joining from. So mention your city and country. So Jennifer is my colleague. She's in Vancouver. We have a couple of people from Nigeria. Robert's in Melbourne, and I am in Nairobi, Kenya. Ooh, South Africa, UK. Couple from India and USA. We have a lot of people from Nigeria. That's great. I'll let some more people in. Awesome. Let's keep that going on, and I will share my screen to just go through a little guidelines for today's session, and then we'll kick off with some questions for Robert. All right. Welcome everybody to this resume building and job search mindset session with EntryLevel. EntryLevel is here to help you learn and get experiences so you can get hired in a job. So either you already taken some of our courses or you're just attending our event for the first time. So I welcome all of you. Our mission is to reskill 1 billion people by 2030. And by being here, you are helping us with your mission. A couple of guidelines for today's session. Be respectful. And when you're asking questions, do not spam the chat. I believe no one will, but just a couple of guidelines before we get started, and keep your mics muted. And if you do wish to speak or ask a question by voice, ask to unmute, and I can unmute you, and you can ask your question, or just type it in the chat and I can ask your question on behalf of yourself, on behalf of you to Robert. And yeah, already covered that. So in terms of today's agenda, we have, just a second, I see a lot of more people joining. So let them in. All right, for today's agenda, we're going to be chatting with Robert, who is a specialist recruitment consultant at Marshall McAdams, which is a prestigious recruitment company in Australia. I'm going to let Robert introduce himself just in a moment. But for today, we're going to dive down into everything about resumes, all the questions that you guys submitted earlier. I have noted all of them down, and I have lots of questions for Robert. So we're going to do that for the next 30 minutes, and then we'll have about 15 minutes to go through some resumes that were submitted by you guys as well. I just randomly shortlisted a couple, and depending on time, we'll at least do 2 resumes, but if there's more time, we'll maybe look at a couple more, and then wrap up the session with just talking a little bit about the mindset you should go in your job search, and some action points for you guys to take on after this session finishes. So Robert, tell us a little bit about yourself. I don't think you can unmute yourself, so I'm gonna unmute you. Just made those settings. Yeah.
Hi guys, nice to meet you all. Maybe you can hear from my accent. Even though I'm based in Melbourne, I'm actually not originally from Australia. Actually came like 4 years ago from Germany, back then on a scholarship to study in Australia, and then then obviously COVID hit and so on, and everything was quite difficult, but I basically pushed through it. Maybe with some tips I can definitely also share from my journey today. graduated, worked then even besides studies for some elite sporting teams in Australia, still doing that on the weekend, casually, but my full-time job essentially is cybersecurity specialist recruitment consultant. What that means is basically joined my current company like 1.5 years ago. And since then, I have developed skills to build entire teams in cybersecurity in ASX listed companies. ASX is basically the Australian, like a stock exchange listed company, so quite big enterprises. So let's say from analyst level up to CISO level. So I guess from basically junior to the highest management level. So I've seen, I guess, like tons of resumes from junior level up to very senior. So I think I can actually make a good judgment now of maybe what good looks like, or if there is actually like one way of doing a resume, because I think there are many different good ways of writing up a resume. Since I guess like I use working for Techstars as a company, or everything is like sort of really startup-y like, I actually have also some sort of tech edge. I'm currently running some small side business with my side hustle with my best friend. So like a data analytics platform, which we are creating for manufacturing companies. So I'm a bit like all over the place, but have established myself very well in Australia in the tech market, and have had very great success. So I'm actually quite excited to meet you all, and yeah, maybe we can take it from there.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction. Great to have a lot of side projects on the side to always keep building and keep increasing your own profile. Amazing. So I'm going to kick off with some questions. They might be a bit jumbled up in terms of I have 4 categories of questions, just general questions about resume, questions about the design and length of the resume. And then we'll talk about experiences, so how to highlight experiences best. And some people have great specific questions based on their own situations, so we can take a couple of those. And then talk a little bit about recruitment systems and what do recruiters really want to see. All right, a really basic question, which was submitted a few times, was what's the difference between a resume and a CV? Oh, you're muted again. Okay, 1 second.
To be fair, I wouldn't know myself. I'm actually also getting always confused by myself. I think I'm not sure. I think like it always feels like in British English speaking countries you say resume, if I'm right, or maybe I might be wrong, and maybe in US it's more CV. So I really don't care. Like some people I'm working with say resume, some others say CV, but in the end I think it's the same. Like I have never actually seen any difference between both. So maybe just my advice in that regards would be to really not care. Obviously, for instance, I know that I'm coming from Europe, so the structure of a resume is maybe a bit different to a resume in US or in Australia. So it really is like country-based. But in generally, I would say some people text me, hey, Robert, here's my CV. Some others say, here's my resume. And in the end, both documents look the same. So I would actually say there's not such difference. Maybe there is. Maybe then I could also educate myself in regards to that. But I think there's no difference. I think it's just like a term which is just used like that.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. So to build on that, whether we're building a CV or a resume, if I'm applying for jobs and I'm in the job search market, should I tailor my resume for each job description, each job that I'm applying for, or should I have a consistent resume?
I would recommend, really depending on experience level. If you are junior, then definitely tailor your resume to every single job description, 100%. Like there's just so much competition that you really stand out if you are tailoring it in the right way. So like let's say if you pick up, I guess, like keywords in the position description, or even like from the company, and you pick those keywords and sometimes maybe, I don't want to say cheat, but just sneak them maybe somewhere in, that's always giving you an edge. Just to give you maybe some idea for very senior people, like let's say it's people who are in senior security engineering positions with many years of experience. Over there, I wouldn't say it's maybe not as important anymore. Obviously, it's just about the skill set. But those people, they're very, very established. You have already an idea of what they're doing. So maybe they're not tailoring it as much, and they're just, I guess, like submitting their resume to like the same resume to like many similar jobs. But especially if you're wanting to get into the industry, I would always recommend to tailor it. And yeah, and I can maybe also explain further later how I would do that, or how I would maybe most effectively spend my time on that. Because I know it's very, very much time consuming. I mean, like I know it for myself. Like, let's say you have an exciting role, many people are applying, and you spend like 5-6 hours on just sitting there, taking the time from your day, and then in the end you get a rejection, which is super annoying. So I can absolutely feel you. But again, it pays off after that time with the volume. It definitely comes.
Makes sense. Yeah, I remember when I was applying for jobs a few years ago after graduation, I had the summary section in my resume, the objectives, and I would just change a few words depending on the job I was applying for. And even I would use the same internship that I did for different jobs. So if I'm applying for marketing, I would highlight my marketing experience in that internship, or just tailor it in a way that would fit the job requirements. Yeah, so it really helped at that point in time, especially when starting out as a junior in new companies. With that, we've almost hit 100 people in this call. So thank you everybody for being here again. Next question is more on the experience side. So one person asked, skills like problem solving, good communication, and being proactive are now stale words in a resume because everyone's using it. But how can we use these skills in a resume? Because we actually possess these skills, but what's the best way to highlight these soft skills in our resume?
Obviously, let's say if I'm looking at the resume, and especially of more junior people, you're right. Some people are just writing, let's say, skills, and they're writing problem solving. But I need to have a backup for that, or I need to at least have some sort of examples for that. So if somebody's just writing as a skill problem solving, I want to have the proof that that I'm at least getting an idea this person has problem solving capability. So if we can, for instance, say as a dot point, develop problem solving skills from having done with this and this outcome, like overcome this challenge with like specific examples to back up every point. The same for, let's say, customer service skills or IT support skills or whatever it is, to always back everything up. Because I'm always saying that, or one of my, I guess, like every word that is vague or sort of like where you, for instance, where you say exceptional communication skills or highly motivated, if it would be me, I would leave those words out, just because you are judging yourself. And on the flip side, if you're applying for a job, I'm already implying that you should be motivated to do the job. Like I'm basically expecting that you're motivated. So I would actually take those words out. I would be really fully focusing on actual skills and like back all these skills up that you are claiming with a proper example in your skill section. So I would for instance, I wouldn't necessarily just write skills as like a summary or something. I would write a proper sentence out, develop problem-solving skills, develop customer by doing this and this and this, and giving very specific examples, which are really measurable, if that makes sense. So that I'm getting a real, because I don't know what your company is sometimes, I don't know what they're doing. I need to get a sense of things as fast as possible, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. In my hurry of starting, I forgot to record this meeting, so I'm gonna start recording now. That's loud. Awesome. We're now recording. Yeah, thanks, Robert, for that answer on how to put soft skills in the resume and more focus on actual work that you got done, instead of, because it's assumed that you
maybe just a quick follow-up on that one. I guess like in, let's say, 30% of resumes, or maybe even 40%, I would say I'm sometimes seeing I guess like those bar charts of, let's say, problem solving, customer service, maybe some IT skills, and then people are rating themselves by giving themselves sort of like, like let's say 4 stars, 2 stars, 1 star, so that I'm getting an idea of how strong someone is. I would leave that completely out, just because who is actually making the judgment that you are that good at something, because if you're saying like 5 stars as problem solving, on which basis is that measured? So it's just a bit misleading in my opinion, and it just looks a bit too, I don't want to say too childish, but just always back it up with proper examples and save space on the resume. It's also all about saving space, but I think we come to that later.
That is a great point. I've seen a lot of those resumes myself, and a lot of templates online have that format of adding your skills in star points or like a bar chart. So I agree with that. And for those who are watching the recording, yes, for those who are attending as well, the recording will be shared. And for those who are watching the recording, we just discussed about how to present soft skills in a resume, and what's the difference, how to tailor each resume to each job description, and when to do that. We're going to move ahead to, since you brought up the bar charts and the funky designs in resumes, it's all the buzz right now, colorful and graphic resumes. You can create resumes on Canva and a lot of other platforms. So and some people prefer keeping a simple and professional resume format, and it also depends on the industries. But especially let's talk about tech, since you are in tech and a lot of people here are also in tech. Do you suggest building a beautiful resume, like a colorful and graphical resume, or a simple and professional resume should do the job?
I think simple and professional is easier for you and also easier for me. I give you just a very simple reason also why. It's just easier to read, and secondly, the recruitment tools we are using, any company, let's say you apply for Google, let's say you apply for a smaller company, let's say you apply through me as a recruiter. Sometimes I have difficulties with complex, like let's say complex designed resumes, which might be looking good, but the software we are using, which is basically reading those resumes or pre-screening those resumes, has very often difficulties in actually gathering that information from that document, or I'm having issues later, let's say, because usually the way how it works is the company is, from a recruiter or HR perspective, they're looking at your resume, and they're looking at your resume not by downloading your resume and then opening Word or opening whatever, Adobe or something. They're basically just skimming through it in a software, and that software is basically having a preview of your resume. So sometimes if you have a resume which is sort of really like not like formatted in the right way, and you clicking through it just appears sometimes not in the right way, and it looks actually worse than a resume which is just like really simply structured. So just maybe just a hint from a recruiter perspective, because because we're not downloading it, because if I'm getting and that's another point, if I'm getting 100 applicants or 200 for a job, I'm usually spending maybe 7 seconds just looking at it and making a decision, and then saying yes, no, maybe, whatsoever. I know it sounds bad, but there's simply just no time. So while it obviously has to stand out, it stands out more with the right skill set as supposed to design. But obviously that always depends on, as Ayush already said, if you're maybe a UX designer or just in general something related to design, then obviously I would recommend setting up a nice created resume, but otherwise keep it neat and clean and very simple. Even with the side breaks, like the page breaks in Word, to really go through it and even make the test yourself, like maybe format it in a PDF document, format it back into Word, check if things suddenly move around or something. If everything appears to be clean to you by putting it here and putting it there and back and forth, then it's actually good to go, because that's what those softwares are anyway doing. Like, if I'm retrieving the resume, or editing it or formatting it myself, that I'm not having work on fixing your resume in the end. Yeah.
Yes, not to make it more hard for the recruiters and the hiring managers to look through your resume. Just keep it simple. You spoke about the systems that the recruitment companies uses, the softwares as well. I think it's called a few people had that question too. What exactly is the applicant tracking system, the ATS? Is that similar to, and how can a resume be designed to pass that first screening? Because and I have a personal example there, because when like 4 years ago I applied for Deloitte. And I applied for 2 different roles and through their system. And for the first one, I did not get any response and it was declined immediately. And then the second time I applied for a similar but different role in the same office, I changed a few things in my resume and applied again. And instantly I got a mail from them to pass on to the next stage, which was an online test. So give us some more background info on how these screening things work, or how to just be more compliant for these softwares.
Good question. I think there's just a lot of talks around that tracking system stuff and so on. But I think, so just to give you an idea, let's say somebody applies, or let's say 100 people are applying. Yes, I'm getting, for instance, and that's maybe what this tracking system is doing. I'm getting a pre-recommendation of, or like I'm getting a recommendation of candidates who seem to be quite strong, because the tracking system is tracking according to, let's say, keywords of, for instance, the position description. So let's say I'm advertising a job, and then it's going according to the position description, who is matching the closest that position description. But it's not necessarily straight away eliminating everyone who is maybe not, maybe not the right fit or so. It's just usually at least an hours. Like we are using a software called Bullhorn, for instance, which is maybe the #1 in recruitment, or let's say also used by big companies. Usually big companies are using Workday or SAP SuccessFactors, and then they have like those integrations, but that's how they are operating as well. It's not like that you're immediately not selected. It's just making a pre-recommendation to a recruiter. Having said that, for instance, I'm still going through everyone, because we, like as a recruiter or HR person, we are still aware that not everyone is a professional in resume writing. Like we still want to give everyone a chance. And sometimes, especially in technology, where there is such a demand for good people, you might sometimes miss out on someone who is great, but maybe not as great in resume writing. So we are definitely aware of that. And we are definitely going through everyone. Still, obviously, the better you still tailor your resume, the stronger it still appears to me then anyway. So it's you can see it either way. But I'll still, like, we're coming back to the point, I would still obviously recommend to tailor your resume, and the better you tailor your resume, the better it's also for the tracking system. But I would say there's nothing like you're directly eliminated or so. Because like, let's say I'm going through and I'm clicking a button green, then I usually is receiving the email of, okay, next round, for instance. So
Right.
that's but there is a manual aspect still behind that. And if you're talking about Deloitte, I could imagine the people might be sitting in a coffee shop somewhere and they're just skimming through it, 6 seconds, 6 seconds, 6 seconds. That's how I would assume how they are doing it.
Yep.
They will still go through those resumes. But obviously, if there are predictions or something, and some companies might be going more according to predictions, which are measured by that ATS tracking system, then obviously it's better to just tailor it anyway, which I would be always recommending, especially for entry-level jobs. Because the more senior you go, the less applicants, and the more you do someone the favor to just, not the favor, but you basically you go through everyone anyway. That makes sense.
Right. Awesome. Thanks for the insights. I have before I move on to my submitted questions, there's a few questions in the chat. How many pages would you say is maximum for a resume?
I mean, there's no maximum. Maybe it's so difficult to say. That's another point to make. Everyone has a different perspective on, like, everyone, like I might be asking 2-3 people in the office, and one person is saying 2, another one is saying 3, another one is saying 4. That's really like, it really depends on the recruiter, and I would say it's not like that something is a no-go. Obviously, maybe a no-go is maybe more than 5 pages, but don't try to stretch if you just have certain experience, don't try to stretch it. Like
Yep.
I have seen very senior people being very successful in their search with just, like I'm talking about people with like 20 years of experience, 20 years just with 2 pages. So they've just densed everything so well together, not necessarily making the font very small, but just very precise, and you know what they're up to. So if you would be, let's say you're coming out of uni, you might have worked while uni, or you have 1 year of experience, I would always recommend 2 pages, very, very precise, and obviously maybe up to 3, 4 pages, but there's not a set rule. I wouldn't say that. You can also make it just 1 page. It really depends. Obviously 1 page is very difficult. But yeah, it's maybe a bit of a vague answer. It really depends. But obviously I wouldn't go beyond 5 pages. That's just annoying. Like the maximum 4, but for 4 you need to be also like, basically your experience needs to explode over many years. But other than that, one or 2 is fine.
Yeah. So beginners for entry-level jobs, I think 1 or 2 is fine. Yep. Yes, 1 page is difficult. So yeah, you can extend it to 2 pages, definitely. And when applying for jobs, let's say through LinkedIn or through other platforms where there's no specified file type for the resume, is something recommended, PDF or Word or?
Actually, it doesn't matter. Obviously, either PDF or Word, because the way how they're just pulled in. Like I'm just reading those. Sometimes I would almost say Word, just because if we are editing the resume after and we have to change it from PDF to Word in order to make a change, obviously it's better to avoid any formatting issues that it's already in Word, if that makes sense. So I would maybe, you go from that perspective, maybe Word as a preference, and secondly then or PDF. Just from it, because that's one of my biggest, always go from the perspective. How is the perspective from a recruiter? What is the day of a recruiter when he's receiving your resume? How can you save that person time? Can you make it as easy as possible to understand what you're up to, or to just avoid any sort of extra work or whatsoever? So yeah, Word maybe, and then or PDF. I know PDF looks sexier, but maybe just keep it as Word.
Awesome. All right. So now I'm going to move on to a couple of questions about how to highlight experiences best in a resume. So from a couple of questions on that. So from a perspective of someone with little experience, someone who's just a beginner, who's done a couple of internships and maybe have student volunteer experiences. So how can they use that to as on their advantage to showcase that they're capable for the job? And even like to build on that also with someone, as someone just posted a question, with someone with a gap in their resume. It was like maybe they took a couple of years off to do something of their own, or maybe because of an illness. How can they show that positively, or in a way that doesn't detest their merit in the application?
I mean, let's say if you have done student volunteering and if you have done internships and all these sorts of things, and you just showcase those properly, I mean, I wouldn't say no, if that makes sense. Like, I think, I mean, the first step is obviously, and it's great that the person has done it, to have done those, or like have gained those experiences, if that makes sense. Like, again, like and it doesn't matter actually if it's an internship or work experience, as long as you can provide specific examples which are eventually relevant to any given jobs you're applying for. That's the key thing. As long as you are specific, you showcase what you have done with percentages, with numbers, with how many team members were involved, how many people, what was your responsibility. Some people make the mistake to sometimes write in internships what they have done as a team, but usually I don't care about that. I would like to know, what are you doing as part of a team? Like, what's your responsibility, so that I know what you are up to. And in the end, it doesn't matter if you can show me that you have done multiple internships and maybe student volunteering or knowing what your hobbies are, and you can say, okay, I've won this, whatever, I've won a medal in athletics or whatsoever. That's always something which wants me to wanting to talk to the person. And I think again, like it's not just about the resume and maybe for another session or something, but it's intersecting very closely with networking, with contacting the right people, maybe on LinkedIn, to get some to get a like to basically also get across how you are in a communication sense or something, to then say, hey, that's actually me, I've applied like that. So they also, all right, cool. Like, like there's more to it then. It's not just like this, the resume.
Right. Got it. In writing on the experience as well. So if someone has a couple of years of experiences, and usually it's said online when you look for tips that try to highlight your experience in numbers as well. So what kind of change you brought in, like you help increase sign up or help increase conversion ratios and things like that, or like how did your work improve the numbers? So because it's easier to measure change. And someone had a question that
I think with illness, right? Like somebody was like if there's a gap in years, I believe that was, I think, one question.
Oh yes, yeah.
I think to be honest, we are all humans. Like, don't forget that, let's say, if I'm looking at something, I might have been sick in my career as well. Like, I can relate to that. It's not like that I'm a robot. My name is maybe Robert. But, if you are writing that you have been ill for 2 years, that's absolutely fine. Like, that's life. Just, honestly, I mean, what about, like, I'm dealing currently maybe with some women, for instance, who are senior cloud engineers at very big companies. They were maybe 2 years on extended maternity leave. So they're writing that in their resume. They might write, okay, I've worked maybe 10 hours a week, what they have done. It's sometimes even a good topic to, like, it's maybe not, sometimes if it's a serious illness, maybe not a good topic to talk about. But, if some people say, have taken off a year to travel around the world, it's a good topic to talk about sometimes in an interview. Just be honest, like, like don't just like say 2018, like let's say 2014, 2016, 2018 to 2020. Just write what happened in those 2 years. Don't just let it stand there. Because obviously, I'm having questions in my mind. What were you actually up to? Were you just holidaying around? Were you ill? Were you did something bad happen? If you don't want to talk about it, that's also fine. But just mention something. Just be honest.
Right. Yep. Honesty always helps. For someone who is in more of an analog style work experience where their job does not directly impact. So, for example, there's a specific question by someone. He works as a content strategist at the university radio station, and they do not have analytics. So there is no way to track the results his ideas have generated in terms of increasing or decreasing audience listening power and purchases. So when he applies for jobs, he needs to play the numbers game, but he doesn't know how to get those numbers without the analytics. So he would like some tips on how to navigate this type of work experience where he doesn't have access to the numbers or yeah.
To be honest, I mean, those numbers are anywhere only there to give an idea. I'm never, especially because let's say if you're looking for program managers or project managers, let's say in what I'm doing, those people might say 14 project managers with a projected value of $50 million budget and this and that. I don't care about if it's 51 million, if it's 50. I just want to have an idea of the size of things. That's it. So you don't have to, like, when you say content or something, just don't make it too precise. Like, of course, if you can make it precise, but it's not a must. Just give me an idea of the ratios of things, just to get an idea of, okay, how many people, what's sort of the scale of things. If you don't know the exact number, that's absolutely fine. And if it comes to, for instance, an interview and people might ask you for that, just be honest and just say, listen, obviously I couldn't pull the exact number. However, just to give an idea of how things are relating, I use this number for that. That's absolutely fine. Just, just use a rough estimate that could sort of reflect of what you are doing in numbers, and that's absolutely fine.
Got it. Awesome. Well, it's been almost 35 minutes now, so I'm gonna maybe share a couple of resumes that was submitted and picked up. So we have a few and we'll look through them. I'll share my screen. Before I do that, a couple of students were asking about, is there and that's like another question as well. So there's lots of templates online. And the templates differ from industries as well, and I guess from country to country as well. What are your thoughts on, because a couple of people are asking for a sample template and CV as well to be shared with them. What are your thoughts on that? And if yes, if they're good, where should we look for them, or do you have any resources on that?
Just to be honest, there are many right resumes. Like, so let's say you go on and you type in template. I mean, I don't want to recommend you take just randomly any template or something, but I'm seeing many different successful resumes. There is not one way to go about things. And maybe just as a tip also, when I was, for instance, writing up my resume after uni, what I was doing was I was getting the opinion from many different people. Let's say instead of getting the opinion from one career advisor, I was getting the opinion from 10 different career advisors. So my resume in the end was a summary of 10 different people, if that makes sense. So one people would have advised me, okay, that's the way how it should look like, or could look like. I took it to the next one, went back to the first one, So I went around different people. So in the end, I was basically I was fitting into everyone's opinion almost. And I was able to say, all right, I found the average of everyone's opinion of the type of resume, that might be great. So there is not a right way. Maybe just, just quickly, maybe as a rough structure, obviously, let's say, name, phone number, address. The address doesn't have to be your house number. It can be just, so let's say if you live in Melbourne city center, you just write Melbourne CBD, Central Business District, or something just to give an idea. Don't have to write, it's so like phone number, mail address, email address, maybe underneath the LinkedIn account. Then I also don't need to know if you are single, if you have a partner, if you are married, if you have 10,000 kids. It really doesn't matter. Sometimes I'm seeing something like that and I'm just getting irritated. It's none of my business. I don't want to know too much personal information, Then your personal profile, maybe 4 to 5, let's say 4 to 5 lines, short and sharp, as specific as possible, which are including your key skills backed up with an example in the profile. Then maybe the education, then your key skills. Let's say if it's technology, let's say you have used Azure, you have used AWS, you have maybe used a coding language as a skill section. Then obviously the experience, then you might put some underneath experience, some certificates, and then, for instance, references available upon request as an example. You also don't need to, that's sometimes a misconception, you don't need to put your referees' details onto the resume. It's not required. Let's say even if you apply for Deloitte or something, if they really want you, they will ask for your referees anyway at some stage. So it's not necessarily required. Some people say they need to. It really depends up to you what you are more comfortable with. But there's not a right way of how to structure a resume. Maybe from a formatting point of view, just keep it neat and clean. Don't load it full with things. As long as it looks neat and clean to you, it will also look neat and clean to someone else. So there are many different right ways.
Got it. Awesome. Last question before I move on to sharing a resume is it important to have a couple of age? Yes or no? Sorry.
Oh no, I don't care.
Yep. So no, age is not important. What about applying for a job? Is it important to have a cover letter along with it?
Definitely yes. Also, I guess depends obviously if they're asking for it. If yes, it's always a bonus. Obviously, it's always if something is competitive and you can increase your chance by 5% to be a step ahead, then do it. As simple as that. and yes, cover letter, and yes, obviously also tailoring then the cover letter according to what is required. And obviously also trying to, because sometimes I'm seeing people trying to fit in all of their experience. And I made that, it's not a mistake, but I just did those things myself as well. Just really use, if you have like 6 experiences, just only list the 3 to 4 experiences which do really matter to the relevant position. Because sometimes it makes people questioning, why is he actually putting that one experience which is completely outside the box? Why is he actually putting that on a resume? It just sometimes makes someone wonder. Because since I'm now on the different side of things, I actually realized that just makes you think too much. So just put the relevant stuff on it, and it's better to elaborate on those points rather than stretching it with more experience.
Right. Awesome. Got it. And even many job applications or job descriptions are quite clear on what they want. If they want a cover letter, or if they don't need a cover letter, they have a bunch of questions that they want answered to know more about the applicant and how would they do well on the job. So it's pretty, if it's not written, have a cover letter, but if it's there, then of course, answer those questions. All right, I'm going to share my screen with all right, see it?
Cool. Looks good. Looks already good.
Looks good. I have a few open here, so I can move around.
I mean, again, that's also just perspective. So let's say I would put the summary, and I would, in order to just save space, I would write out the summary not in dot points, but I would basically write like sentences after each other as a paragraph. So if you write those sentences after each other, and you save another 2-3 lines of space. And you could add this space to, or like the saved space to, as a new dot point under your work experience, for instance. So just a word, for instance, under summary systems is taking away an entire line of space, basically, So just make use of that space. It's perfect. You have already like made it right and so on, which is great. And it looks actually very good, the resume. But again, just maybe I would always write a paragraph as a summary. The other things always dot points, but the summary is a paragraph. And then maybe summary, education, skills, and then work experience. That's what I would be doing.
Sorry, can you summary, work experience?
Correct. Let's say in this case, summary, education, skills, work experience. And then after work experience, maybe for instance, extracurricular experiences. So something maybe you have attended like a congress or symposium, or you won an award for something, then that comes then under after everything and before, like after everything, but before references, obviously. And as for instance, extracurricular experiences. Otherwise, it looks very neat and clean. That's great. Again, like with the skill section, let's say empathy and people skills. I don't know if like maybe you're not, maybe to me, you're not a people person, but for someone else you are. So that's something which is, I don't know, highly organized, like it's maybe then in this case better to bring in maybe technical skills as a dot point. Yeah, technical skills, and maybe elaborate on those a bit more and use those soft skills and basically, bring them in like, let's say, interacted with customers via emails, phone calls, online chat, and in person. So you might bring that one in as, I don't know, like, let's say, developed high organization skills by multitasking, like by multitasking different, customer service channels or whatsoever, just to, like basically which skill develop with what, and you can use those skills. So you save a lot of space actually, but otherwise it looks actually great. It's a great one-page resume. I like it. It's to the point otherwise.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks for the feedback. I'll move on to the next one. Let's see, a bit of time. What about
see, that's maybe like, let's say, I mean, like I have very good eyes, but if I need to basically go very close to it to sort of see what's happening here. So maybe it looks actually great. Like it's another style, and again, like see, like everyone uses a different style of experience, or like sorry, of resume writing. That's awesome. Again, just maybe I know that's difficult, you might say, but I don't have space to do that and so on. I know that, but try to make space then, just try to increase the font by maybe make just the font a bit bigger. And again, like see, like under freelancer content writer experience, there would be more space available, if you just write it maybe a bit more like smarter, like let's say sourced related and high quality imagery, maybe just sourced high quality imagery, like just to save sometimes a word, but it looks then more clean, and you save space to actually bring in more other information relevant to the position. Otherwise, similar to it looks great. Don't get me wrong. I'm just very picky here right now. And again, like, like skills, communication, time management, like show me in your experience where you have developed those skills, because everyone can claim it. And I know that in, let's say, even LinkedIn workshops or something, they just say, okay, put it in your LinkedIn profile, put it in your resume because it just helps you. That might be right, but if it really comes then to the hiring manager in the end, if you basically like you went through the system and you made it successfully to the interview round, but then you are anyway exposed to the actual person talking to you. So it wouldn't make sense anyway. But otherwise, I mean, it looks fine otherwise, just it's great that you include a volunteer experience. That's something I would always bring onto the resume. It's good. Otherwise, I mean, like again, there are different ways of writing things up. It's also cool that the person has like see my website, blog, LinkedIn, and portfolio. That's great. Like I have basically points to, just to click somewhere to see maybe a LinkedIn profile. That's also always great, because always keep in mind that if you are saying you're a freelance content writer, it has to match, including the dates, also on your LinkedIn profile. I've seen so many people who are, for instance, saying, I'm let's say on their resume, they're writing, I'm a technical content writer, but then I'm going onto their LinkedIn and it just says I'm a junior technical content writer. So that raises questions for me, about the personality, about if the person's honest, and so on. Summary compulsory. Good question. I would not nothing is compulsory, but I would say it just helps you. So if you make it short, concise, and worthwhile reading, it's definitely beneficial. That makes sense.
Awesome. Just a second. Someone just shared the resume right now on chat. So I'm going to open that. It's a bit long. Can you see it?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Right, let me scroll down.
So for instance, it looks great. Lots of information, lots of information written. Again, like maybe on the top when basically the address was given, I just wouldn't give I would not state the personal address, if that makes sense. I would just leave that out. I would also leave those, I'm not sure how you call it, but let's just leave it as address, phone, email, without any extra. It's like, I don't know how to say it in English, but it doesn't matter. But just leave that part out. Just Lagos, maybe Lagos city or whatever it is. Again, with skills, problem solving, just to make it as specific as possible. For instance, if you are, for instance, let's say you are a project manager, and I'm actually looking currently for project managers. If you're a project manager, because you have already quite a lot of you have already experience, maybe for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I'm keen to see maybe instead of, and again, that's always case by case, but let's say skills, and then, for instance, projects worked on. That's another point you can make, like obviously achievements. That's what many project managers are having, achievements. And then before actually stating the actual work experience, you basically write all your achievements down in dot points. Have upgraded data center this to this and this by managing a team of engineers or whatsoever, like did you, because like, let's say if you are a project manager, I'm expecting you to have problem solving skills. I'm expecting you to have all these sorts of things. That's nothing new to me. I want to see, I want to see something spicy. I want to see something that stands out to me, otherwise it looks clean. Super, maybe go further down, Ayush. For instance, in that case, and that's right, education is underneath the work experience just because that person seems to be more experienced. Cool. All right, here are accomplishments already. That's fine then. Sorry, I didn't see that before. So for me, this resume looks fine. Absolutely. It looks maybe maybe if you look at it from like that, it's a lot of text. So if possible, cut it down as much as you can. So instead of I have consistently engaged, just say consistently engaged. Leave I have, or leave that out. Just successfully closed. Just to make it as short and precise as possible. The less words you're using, and still saying the same, the more powerful it comes across.
Perfect. Awesome. Great. Maybe the last one for today.
Looks fine. Maybe maybe just making it a bit wider. Making more use of the actual space, and maybe the space between lines and the dot points to make it just a bit wider, just that's easier for me to read. Sometimes it also just helps. Like ask a friend, ask someone completely, not a stranger, but obviously somebody also needs to have the time for that. But just ask someone else for an honest opinion. Or like, just put it aside 1 or 2 days and just look at it, just trying to look at it from a neutral perspective with common sense. Like, is it easy to read? Is too much text, like sort of, visually on one, like, dense together. Otherwise, it looks good. For instance, when you're writing development, cool. The person has actually great experience. Obviously, if somebody's, let's say, a business development manager or has done other things, maybe then in this case, the font a bit smaller, but then elaborating more on the experience, because obviously for such a title, there must have been extensive work with it, or extensive work output or achievements or whatsoever, just to elaborate more on that, if that makes sense. But otherwise, that's great. I mean, that's actually a good resume. Otherwise, just to make it wider, make more use of the space, font maybe slightly smaller, and obviously always as precise as possible. Any word you can leave out, any buzzword, just leave it out. Like make it as precise as possible. But it looks actually very good here, that resume. Besides that, it's to the point. But because obviously, let's say it says over there, let's say startups, marketing, those are like, it feels like somebody is shooting words, like it just puts word on what does it mean, startups? Have you founded a multi-million-dollar startup? Is it a startup just as a side hustle? Partnerships, what exactly does that mean? Yes, of course it gives me, but it's because it's a very broad space here. Like, let's say, obviously depending on which position you are going for, don't confuse the reader. Like I wouldn't know actually what you're going for now. Are you going for fintech? Are you going for marketing? Are you going for partnership? Like, what do you actually want? But otherwise, it looks great. I think
Perfect. Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you, Robert, for reviewing those resumes, and thank you for everyone to sending your resumes, and a couple of people sent me resumes on chat here as well. But unfortunately, we do not have enough time to go through go through all of them. There were like more than 50 resumes, or maybe 100 resumes submitted. But maybe another time. Uh, Great. A couple of yes, Robert, you were saying.
Oh no, go ahead. Sorry, I was just saying I'm impressed by how many people are here. That's great.
Amazing. A few are probably watching on YouTube as well. Cool. Before we start to wrap up, I'm just going to look through the questions in chat. And so it's for people who are, there's a question on hi Robert, how would you advise to a career change in IT? My current job has nothing related to IT. So, and there's a couple of questions like that where people don't have any experience in the new field they're moving into, but they have maybe a couple of experiences. So let's say they have experience in marketing and then now they want to go into data analytics or that sort of things. So they have experience in different industries, but they're moving on to a new industry. So how can they capitalized, and should they mention their different industry experiences in there? And I think that let me add another question, because there's sometimes also jobs that we have done which are maybe like part-time jobs that we do. Like when I was in Australia, I was doing a lot of part-time jobs, teaching basketball or doing other things. Should we mention unrelated things, not related to the job we're applying for in the CV, and how?
Oh, might take another hour. So let's say maybe to the last question, if you should be putting in if you have played basketball or so, or like sorry, you coach basketball besides, you know, it case by case. It's I know people want they want a a go-to answer, but I would actually, if it's an entry-level role, for instance, obviously say that they get an idea of your personality. But if it's then later going more into more, like you have already experience and so on, then I would leave that maybe out. It can be a topic for coffee catch-up. It can be a topic maybe as a side note, as a joke in the interview. But over there, they just want to see results. And they just want to know that if you are coming in, you're not coaching us basketball, you're delivering results, if that makes sense. So maybe for junior positions, not, they just want to get to know you as a person, how it's a first career, like a first career move. But for something more senior, maybe give a short glimpse of maybe hobbies, but nothing else, if that makes sense. Maybe sports coaching or something. And then it could be, actually, what are you doing there? And then you can say, all right, like I'm doing basketball coaching. And for a trend like career move, I actually worked recently with a couple of people together who, some of those are still on the merge or like on the way of maybe like achieving that move successfully. Some others have done that already. What I've seen, what made people successful is always like, I mean, you must have done something in your so far in your career, whatever it is. And I mean, and you want to move into IT. There's obviously always like, I mean, IT is IT, but let's say if you are you want to move into I don't know what it is, but let's say a junior software development job or something like that in an energy company or in a bank. Maybe you have done, maybe there's, the industry of the work you have done so far. Maybe at least you can say, all right, I have already at least worked in the same industry, if that makes sense. Like I've had, for instance, guys who were financial managers. They were financial managers and they were thinking, okay, how am I best possibly moving into technology? So it was basically, we were sitting together, we had like a years-long plan and so on, and we were then in the end coming down to, okay, all right, I'm targeting maybe technology risk management in banks. Like I have worked as a finance, or like as I say, or like financial sales guy in banks, but I'm now targeting maybe technology risk in banking. So I can maybe combine a bit of my experience, plus obviously upskilling through maybe internships, through virtual internships, through basically also just asking people for advice ongoing, to combine that and to make still use of your existing experience. to not say, okay, right now I'm working in a bakery and now I'm jumping into something completely opposite. Try to make the transitions smoothly, if that makes sense. Try to think, all right, maybe I'm working currently in marketing. Maybe there's a software company which is actually producing marketing tools or something as an outcome. So it's maybe good to know how a marketing tool works or something as a developer. Maybe I can make use out of that thinking or something, But otherwise, I know it's a very just to maybe finish off like that, but there is no common answer, Like I'm getting those questions quite a lot, and I'm also thinking quite a lot about it. What's the best advice to give? In the end, it just comes down to perseverance, to maintaining drive, to be very resilient, because obviously it takes time to make that move. And I've seen people who were very much struggling, maybe mentally, or as well, because they were thinking like, oh God, I'm trying now for 1 year. This does not work out. It doesn't help. Nothing works out. To just keep going, always reflect on what went well so far, what didn't went well, and to always learn from these things. Maybe as a final note, when I was applying for jobs, what I would always recommend is for anything, it's maybe like you have maybe a Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel or whatever it is, and you basically you take notes of every application you have written or submitted or applied for or whatever, and you highlight those experiences in either green for being successful or moving to the last stage, maybe orange for made it to, like, let's say, shortlist, red for immediately red flagged or not successful, and then always write down notes on the side of why do you think, reflect actually, like, why do you think this was not successful? What was the feedback? And you basically develop a sheet of like your development in applying and your development of your resume and your development of you yourself in your career towards the career you want to pursue. And it just helps you. It keeps track of things, because otherwise you apply and you think that you are right and everyone else is wrong. But you just have to always constantly analyze yourself, track yourself. That's maybe something I would recommend. Otherwise, it just sometimes takes time. Have patience, and keep going.
Awesome, lots of action points by the end, and great advice, Robert. I hope that answered most of your questions, everybody. I know I had a list of many more questions, but time is always limited. But we'll be having more of these sessions so in the future. So we'll answer the rest of your questions then, everybody. But just like to point out reiterate what Robert said, and a couple of questions by people around someone in product management applying for product management roles but have experience in publishing, and then another one is transitioning from banking operations to product management. It's again when you're applying for roles to look for similarities, and because product management is a very new field and it's sort of everywhere, and every new age startups have a product manager roles. So maybe if you're coming from a banking industry, look for product manager roles in use your banking operations experience and highlight that you have expertise in banking operations, and then you can use that to apply for those roles. And as Jennifer said, doing a lot of personal projects. If you don't have experience in a particular industry that you're looking to hire for, or a particular role, especially things like product management and data, do your own personal projects, build your portfolio, and use that to show that what you're capable of doing, and showcase that in your portfolios. To start wrapping up, Jennifer will be sharing with you the recording, and so you can, of course, go back to this session, because there was a lot of information unpacked by Robert. So you can look into it in the future, and of course, reach out if you have any questions. And we'll be hosting more events. You'll be receiving that information in your email. Robert, any action, any last bits of advice or action points for people? Where can they find you?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. The problem is that I'm just very busy, and obviously you can imagine, and that's also something maybe to keep in mind as a last final note. when you reach out to someone on LinkedIn or email or whatsoever, the problem is just like that I'm getting so many messages in general, or any recruiter, to be, in order to stand out, I guess, or to kick something off, to provide value, you know, to ask something interesting, or to whatsoever. Just to keep in mind, like, I'm more than happy to answer questions as best as I can, so feel free to reach out. But obviously, you know, I won't be able maybe to answer those within the next week or so it might take some time.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Robert. Thank you so much for joining us and for your time in the evening. And
It's fine.
lovely to have you, everyone else, for attending this call live. And we'll see you in the next event. And I'll chat with you soon. See you,
Cool.
everyone.
See ya. Bye.